Hey guys, remember to like the video and hit subscribe.
And the thing that really scares me about the moment we're in is it's harder and harder for everybody to have access.
She said no loan can be forgiven. It's just transferred to someone else to pay. That's their point. Oh, well, but the point of the PPP loans was they were paid for with tax money to, it was stimulus. The PPP loans were stimulus, right? People had to pay back a portion of the PPP loans, I thought. No, I'm pretty sure the PPP loans were totally forgiven as long as they went towards employee paychecks or whatever.
Access to the same facts. It's one thing, like I grew up in a world where, but the thing that really scares me about the moment we're in is it's harder and harder for everybody to have access to the same facts. It's one thing, like I grew up in a world where you watch TV, you got your news from TV, which is like antique from what I can tell talking to students now. But you would watch a TV show and maybe that TV show, that network didn't do it perfectly. But generally what they would try to do is they would cover an issue, whatever it was, abortion, taxes, some bill moving through Congress, and they would have the Republican saying Republican things and the Democrat saying Democratic things, and you would think about it. And watching that, like often hearing the other side would just make you feel what you believed even stronger because you'd be thinking of your own counter arguments. And other times something the other side said would actually get through to you. But the point is you would think about it. And you would have to contend with what other people had to say. And while there were different opinions going around based on different values, they tended to be in an argument that was over the same facts. Now, we don't even have the same facts. And that is a massive, massive problem.
Trusting statistics, like for me personally, I have an issue with like data in that regard. Because like what's the saying? Like you can torture the numbers; they'll tell you anything you want. You know, like it's difficult because every side has different data interpretations to support their.
Okay, just to be clear, this is not true. Or like, there's a world where it's true, where you can torture numbers to get whatever you want, but that's not where we're at right now. We just don't even believe in a basic set of shared facts anymore. You don't have to torture numbers. People just make shit up. It's not even remotely the case anymore, but
and now they're just making up stuff.
Yeah, and like a lack of public trust that I think is probably one of the largest issues I think in American politics is that you can't trust the data, you can't trust the politicians. I think that's the general feeling, and I think even like congressional stock trading is like a major issue with this. I'm curious your opinion on like private holdings for publicly elected officials when it comes to the stock market. And I think that is one of the main things that is eroding the public trust in politicians.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a real problem, and I think they should get rid of it. I mean, this was not a problem for me because I didn't have a lot of wealth. Look, I get it. If I was a millionaire, I'm sure I would like think twice before taking a public service job if that meant having to divest. But like, we're talking about people who are sometimes responsible for like multi-billion-dollar decisions, or in terms of like the course of the national economy, like trillion-dollar level outcomes, right? And if they think even for a second about like, oh, what's this going to do to my stock in Google or whatever, that's a problem, right? And, that coupled with, and this is less politically popular, but I also think a lot of public servants don't get paid enough. And I would go to bat for them getting paid, maybe not the same as the private sector. Like I get that that's never going to be the same, but I do think that they need to be compensated well enough that they don't have to swallow quite as hard before deciding.
You have to incentivize the best and brightest to do the most important jobs. I think it goes for cops,
and again,
doctors,
ideally
teachers,
reward the ones who are
politicians,
best.
but you can't trade stock to make up for the difference. I think.
But I think it's interesting what you said. Like, if people feel like they can't trust the data, they can't trust the politicians. Like, I think those two things are linked because actually the data, it's actually very, very rare for data to be put out that is objectively false. They can happen. Like usually, like the data are like based on some real set of data somebody gathered.
But it can be manipulated.
Right? But how it looks or how you make it sound. I mean, they're doing this right now. Again, the Doge stuff, they make it sound like there's like millions of dead people getting Social Security.
Exactly.
We're just not. That is just not true.
So how many are there dead people? That's because this seemed to me fact.
Well, first of all, like
Biden can get it.
Look, I mean, one thing to think about is like, obviously, the vast majority of people who die of old age are getting.
Oh no! Does he not know that Death Master file stuff? Does he not understand where these numbers come from? Come on, Pete, you can do it.
Social Security the day they die, right? So like for at least a minute or a week or a month or however long it takes, right? There's that process of updating, but part of it had or a week are getting Social Security. Think about it, is like obviously the vast majority of people who die of old age are getting Social Security the day they die, right? So like for at least a minute or a week or a month or however long it takes, right? There's that process of updating. But
man, I think I said this before. They knew my grandma was dead in like 1 or 2 weeks because I tried to I tried to steal my grandma's last Social Security check because it was getting. I think I had it diverted into my account, or I had control over it because I had power of attorney over her for the last years of her life because I was helping her manage her shit. And she died, and then the Social Security got deposited, I think like 2 days later. And I was like, hello, free $1,600 or whatever. We're ballin'. And then before I even finished saying ballin', they clawed that shit back. I was like, what? It was in like a week or two. I don't know how I didn't even know. I figured it would take them a while. I thought it was going to get like 6 months of free Social Security. Motherfuckers.
Part of it
maybe it's not the same for everybody though. I don't know.
To do with how the database was built, and you just didn't necessarily like remove everybody from the database. It didn't mean they were getting money, but it meant they were in the database. And so you could twist that into looking like this is what the president did in his speech.
Okay.
Like it's true, and you just didn't necessarily like remove everybody from the database. It didn't mean they were getting money, but it meant they were in the database. And so you could twist that into looking like this is what the president did in his speech. Like it's true, there's this database that had all these people from like 100 years ago. It was not true that they were getting checks. Okay,
Wow.
but he said the one part.
That's good.
And your brain fills in the blanks, and now you think, oh, there's like millions of people who are 150 years old getting checked.
They sent federal agents to my grandmother's house to verify death. Wait, what? Really?
Not true. So, but the real thing is, we don't trust the people who are supposed to be interpreting the data, and that is like a societal problem. It's not just politicians, right? It's an erosion of trust in every institution where somebody is supposed to help us make sense of this. And I come out of the local, right, where we're a little more connected to reality, because if the roads are in shitty condition and I'm the mayor and I can produce some statistics saying that the roads are great, people can call me out and say, no, they're not. Like I drive on these roads all the time and they're not.
And they're going to see you at the supermarket.
And they will find me and they will tell me what they think of the condition of our roads, right? You get up to the national level and you're so removed from that you start to get into these like alternate reality zones. And then you add to that the fragmentation of where people get their information, because there isn't the, the famous example is Walter Cronkite, right? Like everybody in the 60s, like turned.
The Social Security people don't f around. They sent 3 dudes to my house to verify when my grandma died, and when they found out she was still alive, they killed her.
On Walter Cronkite, and it's not so much that he told people what to think, it's that he laid out a certain set of facts, certain set of things that happened. Everybody, they can argue over what it means, but they would generally agree on what just happened.
Right.
And we don't even have that.
Yeah, we're in the echo chambers, and the algorithms are
You are, yes, we means like you, definitely.
just making those echo chambers more extreme.
So the algorithms are even worse. I mean, the other problem.
The scary thing is these guys will just agree with Pete here and then go back to believing in dumb shit. How do you reconcile that if you're someone like Pete Buttigieg? Voters should just look for confirmation bias in politics. That's why the issue is you need debate. You have to have debate. Because if Pete comes on and says all of this now, and then next week another guy comes on and says some crazy shit, like you said, yeah, they're all going to agree with that guy. But how do you know who's right or who's wrong? I mean, in a vacuum, they're all probably going to be relatively persuasive, right? Or at least they should be. But if you have 2 of them arguing with each other, well, now it's a lot easier to kind of, vibe out, like, who knows what they're talking about and who's utterly full of shit.
Problem I would say is like we no longer have the access to the editorial function, by which I mean like a professional news organization. I used to get so mad at ever from the South Bend Tribune to the New York Times. There were times when I was so pissed over a story or framing or whatever. But I will say, if I actually found that they got something actually factually wrong and showed it, they would correct it. Like there is that ethos.
No, there is no.
And like professional journalistic organizations have to do that. But if we're in a world where somebody weights like what some dude on the internet says the same as a organization where there are people who have to hold to journalistic standards, if that's the same, well, that dude on the internet doesn't have to issue a correction. He doesn't even have to reveal like who he is, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people looking at their feeds, and those 2 things seem equal.
Also, go. The algorithm is going to reward the more salacious version of that information.
Yes, it rewards the lizard brain.
Yes.
Because your lizard brain is taught. The thing we don't realize is every time we click on something, look at something, let alone like something or share something, or I don't know, I'm still talking in Twitter terms like an old man, but like whatever the kids are doing these days. You are actually making a statement about your editorial preferences. You're not intentionally doing it. You're not saying
know us
like
better than we know ourselves.
Give me more. But to me, it's not just how they know us. It's we all have different levels. There's like what we want and what we want to want.
Okay.
There's what we think is important.
This is why TikTok works better than Instagram.
How do you mean?
Because TikTok is what we actually want, and Instagram is what we want to want. We follow.
I see where he's going, but I'm pretty sure both these platforms are pretty similar at this point, but okay.
All these people, we think we want information about what's going on in the world, but TikTok is like, motherfucker, I know what you want. Just shut up, sit down, and scroll. And that's why we watch more TikTok.
Yeah.
And Instagram's trying to compete, but the reality is we don't want to look at all the people we follow.
But also because like both of those things are true. Like both of those are us, right? The me that clicks on the stupid bullshit because it's funny is the same me as the one who, if you just sat me down and said, okay, if I want to allocate like what topics are covered in the hour I'm going to spend online today, would like try to like choose the more high-minded stuff, right? They're both us. They're both real.
Yes.
But the algorithm is empowering the lizard brain. Over the actual, like the citizen brain.
Yeah, it's less cognitive effort. It's more cognitive effort to think about what you want to consume that day and put some work into it. Way less to just scroll.
Even though if it makes you better off, in the same way that like reading a good book might actually at the end of the
enhance your
time
whole
you read it,
life
like make you
experience.
better, like make you feel better even.
Guys, let's take a break real quick so we can talk about the NBA playoffs. Pete, this is not his bag. You know what I mean? Even though the men are in shorts.
Let's get back to the show.
You said one thing that's important for the Democrats is it's where they go and not just kind of staying in the echo chamber. So you're coming on this podcast, which I commend you and thank you for. But is that getting met with a lot of like, I guess, acceptance and like, oh, yes, we should do that? Or are you kind of the only Democrat doing this?
I think it sounds like your experience has been not a lot of people in my party are willing
I'm begging these people.
Do this.
Yeah.
I think that's a mistake.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, look, to be fair, you know, if you're in politics, you know that anything you do, you can get shredded for. Even not something you do, but something that somebody sitting next to you does, and you don't make the appropriate face or scold them for, right? Like, and there's even a contagion of cancel culture where like if you're around somebody who does something, right? And I want to parse like some of that's maybe legitimate and some of it is problematic, right? But all of that's there, and people who are running for office want to win. Obviously, they want to keep their jobs, and to me, it's worth some risk in order to reach everybody. And again, that's partly the habits that I formed while I was an unheard of, 30-something-year-old Indiana mayor running for president. Epic. So we did everything. Like we would do CNN if they would have me, but we would do, literally like Iowa college lesbian radio was like I would like do a show, like anybody who would talk to me. I think that's better though, because I think it better resembles what politics is supposed to be. Like politics obviously has a bad name. People are pissed at politics and frustrated at politics and hurt by politics. But like, to me, politics is a process of making decisions about how we're going to have laws and rules that all of us have to live by, and how we're going to spend resources that all of us are paying into. And for that to make any sense, there has to be a process of encounter. Like we have to be encountering people who don't think like us and don't view the world the way we do, both in order to actually legitimately become smarter and better and make better choices and have better positions, and just in order to persuade. There's no persuasion now, or I think there's not enough persuasion. And that's why we have these 50-50 elections, like this current election. The president won. He says it was a landslide, but like we used to have actual landslides in this country. Reagan, that was a landslide. And I think that my party should aspire to be like a 60% party. And I think we could do it, because most of the issues that most people care about, not all, but most issues, taxes, abortion, guns.
Why does Hassan not like Pete? He's like the perfect progressive, because Hassan is a tanky. He hates progressives or like liberals. Pete is like super liberal coded or whatever, and tankies don't like those people.
Educate, like things that affect how your day-to-day life goes. Healthcare for sure.
You think guns is one of them?
Yeah, maybe. Look, obviously there's a big divide.
Depends on where.
But if we're talking about like,
I think there's support
checks.
For regulation. There's support for background checks, but I don't know if I would like
think about what
the
it
election
says.
on guns.
Sure. But what I'm saying is like something like universal background checks. That's got like between 80 and 90% support.
Yeah, I'm
80% of Republicans are supporting,
and they're trying
gun
to
owners,
reverse
and
it.
yet we don't have. Yeah, like it's hard to even hold on to what we've got, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, my point is like my party should be by the numbers doing better than it does, because more people agree with us more of the time on more policies than not. And so yes, we have some work to do on policy.
So what do you
too,
got to change? Like, how do you sorry, Al, but how do you change that perception? If you know that more people agree with the policies that you guys have, why aren't they agreeing with you? And what are you doing wrong?
I think the biggest problem.
Piggyback on that.
Yeah.
So, I think it's great going everywhere to speak to people. One thing that I don't see happening from the Democratic Party is getting their message out and actually convincing people or letting them know, like, hey, we're doing stuff, or these are the stuff we've gotten done. This is something I don't like that Trump does, but it actually works with like permeating the culture. Like, he ran on, hey, I'm going to get all these criminal migrants out of the country. And then he makes a video where you see all these guys chained up, coming off a plane, going in. That's messaging that you don't even need to understand. You see it, and it's like, hey, he said he's going to do something, and look, he's getting it done. So it's like, I think he knows how to play that social media game where it's like, oh, I know how to speak to people. And that's something Dems aren't doing at all. So it's great that you go talk to other places, but what other ways can you get your messaging through to people?
The only one that does it is AOC and Bernie.
Yeah.
And it's very specific and very targeted, and it works. And it feels like everybody else is worried about, offending somebody or being yelled at by one of your constituents or one of those groups that you're supposed
Is Pete
to.
watering down / hand-holding too much here, or do you find these liberal reach outs to be more productive than they seem? They're probably good.
Be protected.
Yeah. So I think two things. One, I think what they're getting right, which is also what Trump understands about politics and attention, is that you can't be afraid of controversy. And sometimes it takes controversy to get something recognized. So, for example, like, part of why the country is talking about these deportations is there's a couple of things that are traveling together. Like, one, like, I think most people would agree with the idea that, like, violent criminals shouldn't be here, right? But then other things are happening. Like, they take some guy and just send him by mistake to a Salvadoran prison, right? Which is obviously, first of all, a huge, huge problem, like morally and policy-wise. But in terms of the media game that he's playing, even if it's bad luck to have screwed up in that way, it helps him draw attention to what you're talking about, in addition to, like, the social media pictures of it being lined up in the chains. I experienced this a little bit in our stuff because when we did something, when we, like, got a bridge or a road built, it was incredibly hard to get attention on that. Like, we did it. Like, I was out there, go on TV, I'd wave the flag, we'd do an event, cut a ribbon. But it turns out when something was uncontroversially good, it was way harder to get anybody to notice. The projects we got the most coverage on didn't get the most coverage because the project was really great, although I believe in our projects. We did 70,000 projects around the country, from, like, little airport thing to, like, the Hudson River Tunnel. The projects that got the most coverage were the ones where we caught a Republican congressman trying to take credit for the project after they voted against it, because it just created, like, a different, more interesting story, right? So, like, nobody would even know that we were, or very few people would have ever heard that we were doing a rapid transit project in Charleston, South Carolina, if the member of Congress there, Nancy Mace, hadn't tried to take credit for it and then got blown up on the internet because she tried to stop the funding from happening in the first place. So it's complicated to figure out what lesson Democrats should learn from all this.